Hey gang, today I'm taking you to Cappadocia. We spent 3 full days in Goreme. There's a wide range of activities and excursions in Cappadocia. I'll tell you the ones I liked and the ones I did not like. We arrived in Goreme early morning after a night coach. There are not that many train lines in Turkey, but you have a lot of coaches. They are fairly comfortable because there are only 3 lines of seats. So you basically have more space. And you could be sat alone, you don't need to have anyone falling asleep on your shoulders. So you can almost get a decent night of sleep in those coaches. This is the view from the terrace at our hotel. We stayed in a lovely little hotel called Ballon View Hotel. This is breakfast, with French fries. And those interesting little liquid jams, they are often on the breakfast buffets. Now, there are a lot of activities. Jeep Safari, Turkish Hammam, Salt Lake, Tour Red, Green Tour, Camel Safari, private tours. It's a bit overwhelming, to be honest. We didn't quite know which to pick. Eventually, we decided to go for the Green Tour. Because a lot of the locations on the Red Tour, you can actually access them on your own. They are not too far away. Originally, we wanted to rent mopeds or maybe an ATV quad bike. We were very quickly discouraged by the prices. I expected the rental prices to be quite similar to Greece. It is not. The first shop we asked to rent an ATV quad bike for the day, they said 500 euros. A day! I thought they were joking, they were serious. Eventually we found one that said 90 euros a day, but even that is way too much. Scooters were a bit cheaper, but it was just too much anyway, so no vehicle for us. On the first day we walked. We walked all the way to the Goreme open-air museum. You can already visit a few of those cave dwellings on the way. The geology in Cappadocia, it's completely out of the ordinary. You've got those little structures known as fairy chimneys. This unusual landscape happened because Goreme was once underwater after a lot of rain. Now this rock is quite fragile, as it was created from volcanic ashes, coming from the 3 different volcanoes surrounding the area. And with heavy rains flooding down the area, the water has sculpted the rocks, creating those crazy formations. Pomegranate wine. Pomegranate, it's called nar. Here's a lovely little camel, probably only for photo shoots, on your way towards the Goreme Open Air Museum. The Goreme Open Air Museum is fascinating. It is basically the first complex of monasteries in the world. See those little carvings in the rocks? That's for the pigeons, as they used pigeon poo as a fertilizer. On some part of the structure you might see this kind of fiber. It's not because it's fake. They're just trying to protect the rock against those dramatic changes in temperature. The entrance into the museum cost 20 euros. That is without the audio guide. The audio guide is another 10 euros. Which I was willing to pay because I wanted to learn the history. And then they asked me to leave my passport with them as a deposit, just to make sure I don't leave with the little device. That is ridiculous if you ask me. I offered to give them a money deposit instead. They said no. Why would you want my passport? They could so easily give it back to the wrong person by accident. And having a French passport, living in the UK, it'll be a nightmare for me to get home. So no audio guide, I'm afraid. So those beautiful little caves are basically a collection of churches. And you can still see some of the frescoes on the walls and ceilings. They have been preserved with the dry climate. At the time they would do some kind of a plaster first and then the painting. People used to learn religion by looking at those images. Because we couldn't rent our own ATV, we thought, what about doing one of those tours? Bad idea. They are affordable. We paid 12 euros per person. But we expected a group of maybe 10. Nope. You had about 90 ATV. And because we were riding right behind dozens of those ATVs, the dust and the pollution was unbearable. I couldn't even drive because I had no glasses. I couldn't open my eyes. The pollution was so bad, all my clothes smelled like petrol for days. I had to do a wash. I did expect it to be a bit dusty and sandy, but not like that. So unless you absolutely love air pollution, don't do it. They do take you to beautiful sights, but honestly the ride is not enjoyable. Look at how many ATVs in one stop. So I would definitely not do it again. It was probably a bit worse for me because I wear contact lenses and I had slept with them on the night coach, so I had been wearing them for 48 hours and I was a bit afraid of getting an eye infection with the dust. But even if it wasn't the dust, the air pollution was just way too much. They did take us to a beautiful spot for sunset, but you had to fight for your spot. There were just so many ATV quads. Paradise for Instagrammers. We got back into the Goreme town center for dinner. The town center is beautiful as well. Some of those fairy chimneys are lit up, which is really nice. Those little dwellings into the rocks and those little hidden churches into the rocks, they had been created by some of the first Christians. You know, at the time, the Roman Empire was still polytheist. At first, they saw those early Christians as like a sect that had to be managed. But eventually they started to persecute them. That's why the early Christians had to hide into those caves. Lentil soup, and menemen, the Turkish omelette. And that's the Turkish raviolis. The next morning we woke up early to go into a hot air balloon for a sunrise ride. That's the only rides they do, sunrise. Now we visited mid-November, which is actually perfect if you want an affordable balloon ride. The prices for the hot air balloons, it's almost like airline fare tickets. They go up and down depending on many factors. We paid €70, which is not bad, because in the summer, it's up to €400. My understanding is that they have a cap of 160 balloons a day. So in the summer, when it's very busy, prices go up. And because they have people willing to pay $400 for a ride, then they do it. Even in the winter, you could be unlucky because if one day is cancelled because of the wind, that can happen a lot in the winter, then the next day is going to be more expensive because a lot of people are going to want to do it the next day. And if you happen to have 2 days in a row cancelled because of the wind, well, the day after that is going to be very expensive. Because this is the main attraction. A lot of people come to Cappadocia to do the balloon and horse riding as well for some reason. We did not go horse riding. It's not my type of thing. Some say that the name Cappadocia means land of the beautiful horses. That's only one of the possibilities though. They also do a lot of photo shoots with horses or beautiful old cars and beautiful dresses next to the fairy chimneys. Again, not my thing, but that happens a lot. Sadly, it was a little bit cloudy the morning we did it. The views are probably even better when the sun is up. This type of expensive excursions, by the way, you can pay with euros or dollars. So if you're trying to estimate how much cash you need to exchange, don't worry about those attractions. Instagrammer on board. The balloons get really close to the rock formations. Oh, look, 2 balloons having a little kiss down there. Apparently it's not dangerous, it happens all the time. You probably don't even feel it if you are in the basket. This is the balloon point of view spot, where people come and see the balloons from close up, even if they're not riding them. And after the ride, fake champagne! It's basically soda.
3.
Now, straight after the balloon ride, we went for a daily excursion. You get picked up from your hotel in a minivan, and off you go. For the green tour, after a bit of negotiations, we paid 45 euros. Our tour guide added a few stops that were not on the list, like this jeweler with local stones, probably to try to get some commission if we bought anything. The second stop was the Pigeon Valley. Now, with those daily excursions, be careful. You could find cheaper online. For example, the green tour, I did find it online for 25. So I contacted them to see how they could be much cheaper than anyone else. It's because they did not include the entrance fee. Interesting products for sales on that stop. If you take this, you can make love 5 times a night. The gentleman did not want to tell me the ingredients. This is the Narlegal Lake. Apparently, it changes color through the season. If you happen to be from Turkey watching this video, I do apologize if I butchered the name. For the lake or the Pigeon Valley, there are no entrance fees. But for the underground city, as well as the monastery, you have. The fees are usually included unless you book one of those very cheap ones online, in which case you'll end up spending more because you'd have to pay for the entrance fees, so be careful. This is the little village in the middle of a canyon where we went for lunch. So €45 for a minibus all day, a very decent lunch, a tour guide, plus the entrances to the attractions, it's fair enough. This is where we had lunch by the river. With a lot of little furry friends around. Next up, the Göreme monastery and castle. By the way, our guide cheekily tried to skip that one, potentially to save on the entrance fees. So make sure you see all the attractions listed on the tour. This was built in the 9th and 10th century as a monastery as well as a coaching inn, a place where people would stop for a little pause on the trade routes with their horses and their goods. Next up came Mikely Underground City. In the first level you've got the stables. This was to attach the horses or any cattle. They kept them on the top level to avoid gases. We are not too sure when the first level was dug up, but before Christ. This particular underground city has 8 underground levels. Only 4 are accessible to the public. The lower levels are Byzantines for sure. Thousands of people would live in here, hiding away from their enemies. See this big block of stone? That was a door. They'll place that to block the entrances. The Byzantines often had to hide here due to the frequent Arab invaders in the Middle Ages in the 7th and 8th century. It was never a place where they lived long term. Here is another door. It was a place where they hid, but sometimes for months. It is a UNESCO World Heritage since 1985. Now with the underground cities, don't worry too much about which one you visit. My friend and I did a lot of research to find out which one was the best one. Some people said they're Nkuyu, but really my understanding is that they're pretty much all the same. This was the cemetery, by the way. That's where they placed the dead. They covered them in ashes until they could finally rebury them up there. They had churches as well, as you can see. They also had schools, kitchens, and of course, wineries. You know, the Byzantines, they loved their wines. The little kind of graffitis here above the gates, that's to remember who got what portion of food. They'll mark it down in the stones. That was maybe to grind their spices. Due to the lack of water in the soil, the rock is easily moldable. That's how they could carve it easily. As you can see, you need to be fairly flexible to access. And of course, not suffer from claustrophobia. Here is part of the winery. Would you believe we had forgotten about those caves? They were rediscovered in the 60s accidentally. Nkuyu was rediscovered in 1963 by a local man that was annoyed because he kept losing his chickens. Eventually, he did refurbishment in his property and he found a little hole that led to the cave. There were the chicken skeletons. When living here, they had access to the water tables. So they could drink, of course, they had some food, and they also had ventilation. They had those very deep, vertical ventilation pipes. Here's one of them. Some people must have hid here again through the 11th century when the Seljuk and the Ottoman attacked. Pooing in a jar was probably the most annoying thing. There are 36 underground cities interconnected. There might be more to discover. Next up, Turkish Delights shop and tasting session.
Middle on my right side, dried fruits and nuts. On my left side, Turkish Delight in different flavors. Start with this one, apricot chocolate, one of our best-selling products. Inside is apricot covered with dark chocolate and coconut.
That stop was also not exactly on the list, but I guess the tour guide was also waiting for his commission on anything we'd buy. It was great, though, to be able to taste those interesting products. Peanuts covered with Doritos. And the last day, we rented mountain bikes because we couldn't afford to rent an ATV quad. I can't remember how much we paid at the end. I think we paid 500 liras. So about 15 euros for the day. They were good bicycles though, perfect for the type of terrains we had to cycle. So we were free to go and explore more of that amazing landscape. His name is Kalaman. Hello, Kalaman. Hope you enjoyed that little snippet of Cappadocia. If you are planning a trip and you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the comments. And if you are a local and I missed anything amazing, do let people know in the comments as well. To see a bit more of me on YouTube, make sure you check out my live section.